Am I my brother's keeper? The book of Genesis, chapter 4, verse 9, Cain and Abel. In brief passage, Genesis chapter 4, verse 1 through 16. Theme, the first murder. Primeval period. Setting primeval period, the unnamed land where Adam, Eve, and their children live after leaving the Garden of Eden. Key figures. Eldest son of Adam and Eve and the brother of Abel. Like his father, Cain is an agriculturalist. Abel, second son of Adam and Eve and younger brother of Cain. Abel is a herdsman. The story of Cain and Abel is the second installment of the fall narrative, describing the first manifestation of evil in humankind. Genesis chapter 4 tells how Adam and Eve's older son Cain murders his younger brother Abel. It follows a similar pattern to the previous chapter. Ignore divine warnings and committing a sin is punished, in this case with exile. While Adam and Eve disobey God's specific command, Cain's sin is violence. His anger at God and jealousy towards Abel lead him to commit an act of fratricide. Sibling rivalry. Genesis chapter 4 begins with the birth of the two brothers to Adam and Eve. When the boys reach adulthood, they pursue different occupations. The elder Cain becomes an agriculturalist, a tiller of soil like his father. Abel, the second son, becomes a pastoralist, a sheep and goat keeper. These were the chief occupations during the time in which the authors of Genesis were writing, and tensions sometimes flared up between agriculturists and pastoralists over the use of the land. However, there is no suggestion that disputes over land use or any inherent conflict between the occupations was the source of the animosity between Cain and Abel. In the passage, both brothers bring sacrificial offerings to God. Abel takes fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock, while Cain brings some of the fruits of the soil. Chapter 4, verse 3. God responds favorably to Abel's offering, but not to Cain's, which is less valuable. Cain becomes jealous of Abel. Noticing Cain's anger, chapter 4, verse 7, God warns him that if he does not do what is right, sin will crouch at the door. The Hebrew word for crouching being the same as the Babylonian word for a demon that waits in doorways. Play on words by the authors of Genesis who were writing during the Jews' captivity in Babylon in the 6th century BC. God tells Cain to master the demonic temptation of sin. Cain, however, does not temper his impulses. Instead, he lures his brother out into the field and murders him. Cain's punishment. When God asks Cain says that he does not know. Am I my brother's keeper? He asks. Verse 9. In another play on words, he is insolently asking, am I the agriculturalist, the shepherd of my shepherd brother? God knows what Cain has done and banishes Cain from the land unto which he spilled his brother's blood. He will be a restless wanderer on the earth. God says, verse 12. Unrepentant, Cain says his punishment is more than he can bear. Before exiling him to the land of Nod, east of Eden, God puts a mark on Cain. Contrary to popular wisdom, this mark of Cain is a sign of God's continued protection, not a brand of shame. God says that anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. Cain then leaves for the land of Nod. The sanctity of life. The 10 Commandments that God gives to Moses on Mount Sinai in Exodus are clear. You shall not murder. The book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 13. Cain's punishment for murder was exile. God punished him, but also showed mercy by extending Cain his protection. In this way, God sought to avert a potential cycle of violence and retaliation. By marking Cain, Genesis chapter 4, verse 15, stopped others from taking the law into their own hands by killing Cain. God's plan seemed to work for a time, as the next murder to be recorded by the Bible happens 5 generations later in Genesis 4, verse 26. This time the murderer is Cain's descendant Lamech, who kills a man for wounding him. Lamech says if Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. Chapter 4, verse 24. In Israel during biblical times, anyone who takes the life of a human is being put to death. But places of refuge were also created for anyone who killed someone accidentally or unintentionally. The book of Joshua, chapter 20, verse 3.